Hello everyone, my name is Aspen Kohler, and today I'll be doing my presentation on the influence of COVID-19 and the impact it has on trade. COVID-19 has created many unfortunate events and losses throughout this year. We've missed out on things, we've digressed on, and major setbacks have been made throughout this year. And hopefully this presentation gives you more info about how this virus is affecting trade and in the US and internationally as well. So for today's presentation, I just wanted to provide an outline to give you a little basis of what's going to be covered and talked about, and what's also going to be talked about from Module 6 that we were supposed to incorporate in this presentation. To start, we have an outline, and the first thing that we're going to talk about is how has the virus affected trade? How has the recession altered the U.S. trade deficit? Has quarantine affected usage of transported material? We're going to talk about the safety valves associated with trade throughout the pandemic and resistance to trade, and the conclusion. So, how has this virus affected trade? Trade is a major thing that is affected, especially in recessions, which the United States is in, including many countries right now that are actually recovering a little bit more well than we have been throughout this whole pandemic. This virus has affected trade enormously. And in general, the U.S. recession is more damaging, like I said before, compared to other countries. The bullets that are provided in this slide, COVID-19 has affected trade heavily. Yes, it has. Services have been cut down tremendously. Haircuts, travel, going to school, going to work, restaurants, they've all been cut down, and aircraft and automobile parts exported have also been down 30 to 40%. An example is how U.S. is a major exporter for services like schooling and travel, like I said. And throughout the pandemic, no one was allowed to leave or do really much anything since we were all in quarantine. And this really affected exports, even though imports were affected a lot more heavily. This affected exports, and in result, those services are down 50%. Now, this is just the U.S. alone, and tourists and services bring income anywhere, whether it's a country or state or whatever it is. So this really halted a lot of things, which influences the economy pretty much everywhere. Since this pandemic started, it's really taken a toll on trade and the economy. To finish that last slide, though, yes, this virus has affected trade, and including the imports and exports that are involved. Things like agriculture aren't really affected as much as trade, just because people need to eat, and agriculture is a major export. So every economic factor responds differently to this virus. Sorry to skip and leave that slide so much ahead, but next we have on this slide, has the recession altered U.S. trade deficit? To speak on the bullets that are provided on this slide, some sectors suffer while others increase. That's going to happen everywhere you go with things like this. And trade between China, Canada, and Mexico has decreased by close to 20% for all three of them. This recession has affected the U.S., but we are managing, because although some sectors are doing poorly, others are doing better, are close to what they would be normally. And additionally, this recession has altered the trade deficit by influencing what we were importing from other countries like China, Canada, and Mexico. Like I said before, trade between all of these countries has gone down by close to 20%, which shows how this trade deficit is negatively impacting all of these countries, because the recession's going on, and the unequal balances of the needs and goods in this pandemic and what people can even do and what people are using. Next, we're going to talk about, has quarantine affected usage of transported material? Yes, quarantine has caused people everywhere to socially isolate. Therefore, there is a lack of travel. I have the picture of DoorDash here because people, if they didn't want to go to the grocery store, they've come up with a lot of no contact services where you could just have your food delivered and you pretty much picked up anywhere, which also increased like stuff in that job department, so people were able to DoorDash and be DoorDash drivers. And I'm sure this business and other business like it have been heavily benefited in a good way from this pandemic because of the usage and how it has increased. Yes, quarantine has affected the usage of transported material. Like mentioned in the first slide, quarantine stops people from leaving their house and continuing their normal daily tasks like shopping or going out to eat and school and work and all that good stuff. And result of this, it has compromised imports and people are traveling a lot less. I know from personal experience, I rarely drove my car. It just sat out there. Like, people were even contemplating, like, paying their insurance that month for that, because it's like there was no point. Like, we weren't traveling, we weren't going anywhere, like, we couldn't. So this in turn means, because of everyone not driving and not traveling and any of that, meant that imports of oil were decreased, and